Speaker, I yield 4 minutes to my very good friend, distinguished member of the Rules Committee and of the Energy and Commerce Committee, Dr. Burgess of Texas.
The gentleman is recognized for 4 minutes.
And I thank the gentleman for yielding the time. Madam Speaker, before coming to Congress, I practiced medicine for nearly 30 years. I had the privilege of delivering 3,000 babies. I dedicated my career as a physician to protecting the lives of children and families and running a pro-life practice in North Texas. I've seen both sides of this argument, both as a doctor and a policymaker. Indeed, the chairman of the Department of OB-GYN at Parkland Hospital, Southwestern Medical School, when I was a resident, pointed out to us that those of us who were privileged to begin the practice of obstetrics were unique in medicine in that we were going to be charged with taking care of 2 patients with a combined life expectancy of over 100 years. And almost nowhere else in medicine do you have that ability to impact the future. Back in 2002, I decided to run for Congress because I saw lawmakers, particularly in Congress, who've never experienced taking care of a patient, discussing and setting the stage for how you're supposed to run a medical practice. Today is no different, and it is deeply frustrating to see individuals discussing procedures with little understanding of how or why they are performed and how they affect the patients involved, both the mother and the baby. Throughout my time as an OB-GYN, I've taken care of women with ectopic pregnancies. Never any hesitation. That does not change after a Supreme Court decision. I've taken care of women who unfortunately were suffering from miscarriages. That will not change after a Supreme Court decision. I have had cases where a woman had an abortion at another location and then presented to my hospital in a crisis because of complications. And without hesitation, I would render care to those patients irrespective of any Supreme Court decision. Many of those cases indeed were life-threatening, but each and every time, my responsibility was to step in and save a life. And again, that's done without hesitation. Supreme Court decision changes none of that, despite the heated rhetoric we are hearing from the other side. It seems like a simple answer, have an abortion, take care of a problem. Back in 1973, when Roe versus Wade was first decided, sonography, medical sonography was really just beginning. And in the time since then, it has really developed into a science unto itself. In fact, 2 generations of Americans since Roe versus Wade was decided have as their first picture in their baby book an ultrasound picture or maybe a videotape of themselves as unborn children. Indeed, 2 generations of Americans have no trouble assigning agency to that pregnancy because they know from whence they came. An abortion is a highly complex and deeply emotional decision. The decision affects, yes, the mother, no question it affects the baby, affects other family members, and yes, it affects the provider as well. My belief in the right to life has influenced my professional career for much longer than my time in Congress, and I will remain committed to that. After a lifetime dedicated to pro-life work, there is no question it is just the right thing to do. You always err on the side of life. You always give life a chance. Now, this rule also includes consideration of the National Defense Authorization Act. Yesterday in the Rules Committee, there were a lot of amendments submitted. There are a lot of amendments we're going to debate on the floor. Most of them were amendments submitted by Democrats. Republicans got very few of those. But I submitted 2 amendments to require reports to the Congress.
I yield the gentleman an additional minute.
Gentleman is recognized for an additional minute.
I submitted amendments to require reports to Congress on our military response in Ukraine and the chaotic withdrawal from Afghanistan last August, something that we cannot allow to be repeated. Russia invaded Ukraine in February, and yet we have not had another briefing by the generals and State Department as we did prior to that invasion. The situation is vastly different on the ground. We were given the understand that it would not take long for Russia to completely overrun Ukraine, didn't anticipate the response of the Ukrainian people. And now we see a war of attrition evolving, but Congress is not read into any of the administration's plans. And then finally, we've got to ensure that the chaotic withdrawal from Afghanistan, fully investigated and understood what advice was the president receiving, from who did he receive it, and how do we prevent that from ever happening again. I thank the gentleman for yielding the additional time, and I will yield back.